beautiful thing. Have we got Jena? Bring on the wonderful Jena Ellis. I'm telling you, I didn't get your rent check, Jena. You're supposed to be paying rent on this studio at this point. But I caved.
Yes, well, I haven't gotten my tiara yet, so I think we're fair on that one.
All right. Well, I caved into the Twitter mob demanding that you come back, but I'm always so happy to see you. Director of the Dobson Policy Center, a constitutional lawyer. Her book is The Legal Basis for a Moral Constitution. You look like you're in Washington, D.C. Don't tell me, are you invited to the confirmation?
I am, and it's very exciting. I'm here at the Trump International Hotel right now, so that's very exciting. And Dr. Dobson and I will be attending the swearing-in event at the White House tonight, which is a great honor.
That is great. Well, you are there for us all. You are representing all of us, and that's really terrific. I'm glad to hear it. So what does this mean from a legal standpoint? I mean, this is the stuff that we don't have the expertise to know. You know about Kavanaugh's decisions. You know the cases he's going to be facing right away, some of them, because the court's in session. What do you think is the immediate effects that we'll see?
Well, the immediate effect, I mean, nobody is sitting here talking about, oh my gosh, product liability is just going to totally change. I mean, we're talking about a conservative majority, mainly for the issues that the left has been using to manipulate an activist court for the last 50 and 60 years. And so in the initial term here, I think what's going to be interesting is to see what cases they actually vote to bring on the docket, because only 4 justices need to vote affirmative to grant what's called the writ of cert, or the cert petition to get a case on the docket. And so Justice Kavanaugh now will represent, I think, an important 4th vote to get cases that may otherwise have not been heard, like the Masterpiece Cake Shop case from last year. That stood pending for several years before they got to 4 votes to actually hear that. So I think we're going to be seeing more religious liberty issues, more freedom of speech issues, more First Amendment cases generally, and things that a conservative court will now hopefully try to continue to preserve and protect our fundamental freedoms through cases that they add on to the docket.
So that's really interesting. Was it Kennedy, you feel, who was not that 4th vote when those cases like Cake Shop were coming up?
Yeah, Justice Kennedy had a very interesting dynamic on the court. He was known as the swing voter, the most powerful man in Washington because of that. And he did definitely believe in our fundamental protections, but where he was very weak and non-conservative was on the social issue agendas. And so, of course, he wrote the Obergefell versus Hodges majority opinion, the same-sex marriage opinion. And that case, frankly, read like a Hallmark card. I mean, it was something that was not legally robust. It absolutely went against the constitutional framework. And that was all 4 of the dissents in that case were very clear that this was potentially a win for the LGBT agenda, but it was not a win for the Constitution. And so where Justice Brett Kavanaugh, I think, will step in and be different than Anthony Kennedy is looking at protecting and preserving the Constitution. He has had a very, very clear track record, and even conservatives initially wanted Amy Coney Barrett. Some of them did, but for Kavanaugh specifically, I think that the reason that both sides were a little bit hesitant in the beginning is because he's not an outcome-based jurist. And as a constitutional law attorney, I think that's actually the most appropriate justice that we can have on the court.
That's really interesting. I mean, Susan Collins spoke at length. By the way, I have to just mention that the dissent, Antonin Scalia's dissent in Obergefell, is one of the great pieces of writing. I think everybody should read that. Susan Collins was talking about this, that he is, in fact, he is bound to precedent. He does respect the precedent that may keep something like Roe v. Wade in place after so many years. What is it, like 45 years? Do you agree with that?
I think that if Brett Kavanaugh is looking at the Constitution, then he will apply the originalist doctrine. And that means there is no right to abortion in the Constitution. We've talked about this before in the sense that if they are actually faithfully applying what the legislature can actually legislate pursuant to Article 1 of the Constitution, that is not a right to privacy that covers abortions in those circumstances. And so if they were to overturn it, I think it will be by degree, and it will then, the easiest way to do that is from a federalist perspective to say this is really a state issue. Right. Turn that back to the states. And what's fascinating about that is even the Murphy versus NCAA case that even Justice Kennedy last term voted, it was a 5-4 decision on the state gambling statutes. That was a federalist decision where 5 justices who were acting as originalists said, this isn't something that we as the federal government can regulate. This has to go back down to the states. And if we're not looking at this from a politically biased perspective, that's really where it should go. And I think that the Supreme Court, with a Justice Brett Kavanaugh, we will see that within the next couple of years. And this is why the left is so angry and why they're putting up from the Women's March today on their Twitter a banner of Susan Collins saying she is a rape apologist. It's absolutely ridiculous because they're saying we only support the women who we agree with, and their agenda is completely pro-abortion. It's not about the Constitution. It's not protecting liberty or life.
You know, that rape apologist sign is another Soros-funded effort that was put out there by one of his organizations. My last question is the position of John Roberts. A lot of conservatives, Ben Shapiro among them, are very disappointed with Roberts. I feel a little bit more. I approve of him a little bit more. What position do you think this is going to put Roberts? Does Roberts now become Kennedy? Does he become the swing vote on the court?
He's probably the one that on some of these issues, like we saw, we were all disappointed in him for the Obamacare decision. Yeah. For some of those issues, he tends to be a little bit more of a broader government intervention. So I think that the cases that we need to look at are immigration issues, and especially the administrative state. So when we're looking at something like Chevron deference, which is, of course, the legal term for saying what does the federal judicial branch have to adhere to when an administrative agency is looking at interpreting and applying a congressional statute, how much deference do we give them to interpret their own mandate? And I think those cases in particular will be very interesting for Roberts. But he has a lot of colleagues now who hopefully, now that Justice Kennedy has stepped aside and resigned, hopefully he will find himself among a conservative majority that will encourage him to do the right thing. And again, faithfully apply the Constitution. This isn't outcome-based. This isn't just saying that, okay, now conservatives, if you identify with a certain group, now we're pushing our agenda through. Conservatism is about conserving the rule of law, having liberty and justice for all. That's what our Constitution provides, but within those limited margins of government. So I think this is a great day for America.
Amen, amen. Thanks very much, Jen. It's always great to see you, and I'm really excited you're going to be at the confirmation. We'll be thinking about you.
I'll send you pictures. Thanks so much for having me on, Drew.
Have a great time.